Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on the show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This podcast is sponsored by SyncBack Pro, the professional photographer's tool to keep your images safe. How safe are your photographs? Or to put it this way, how would you feel if you permanently lost some or even all of them? The fact is, there are very real risks in storing your digital images on a hard drive, even if they're backed up to an external device. There's ransomware, hardware failure, file corruption, virus infection, and even accidental deletion or destruction. SyncBack Pro makes this problem go away permanently. SyncBack Pro is the professional photographer's tool to back up photographs, images, documents, and data files. Once set up, it keeps your files safe, quietly and reliably in the background. So if problems occur or disaster strikes, you'll have nothing to worry about. Your photographs will be safe. Which is why it's also the backup solution that I use myself for my own photographs. Take advantage of an exclusive 25% discount today by going to www.backup.sg. The software will never expire, meaning your photographs are safe forever. That's www.backup.sg. Give your photographs the protection they deserve. And now, on with the show. TJ Thorne is an Oregon-based fine art, landscape and nature photographer. The inspiration for his work is found in the simplicity and calming aspects of nature and is often evident in his photos. Photography is his means of experiencing nature in a much more intimate way. Nature envelops TJ in his true surroundings and his appreciation for life. For TJ, there's a difference between being in nature and being in nature. We talk about his epiphany in looking at nature's colours as abstracted elements, his move from full-time management in a food business to photography as a business, as well as the importance of taking crappy photos. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day TJ, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing? It's the morning for you. It's
morning for me. It's quite a nice autumn morning here. It's been pretty warm since summer. Summer was actually pretty cold here, which is
no really.
And when I say cold, I temper it.
Yeah, no, we're coming out of our winter. I live in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, so our winter is basically just wet. Winter's optional, so if we want snow, we can go to the mountains.
Right.
But it's been pretty rainy lately. We've had we're on the cusp of going into the dry season where it doesn't rain, and during that time we get a lot of storms kind of rolling through. So we've had a lot of big thunderstorms and a lot of hail this year.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to some nicer weather though.
Yeah, well, we've had heaps of rain, and it was forecast actually to rain today, but it doesn't look like it's going to so far anyway. Maybe later.
Keeps it green up here at least.
Yeah, that's it. I've no doubt we'll be back in a drought at some stage in the next couple of years. So it's always that big long cycle that you get with La Nina and El Nino.
Yep.
Anyway, let's stop talking about the weather and talk a little bit about photography. Tell people who you are and why you do what you do.
Sure. My name is TJ Thorne, and I am a photographer based out of the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I live just outside of Portland, Oregon, and I'm a professional photographer. I teach workshops. I have a book coming out, which I think we're going to talk about. And basically my work focuses on the calming simplicity that can be found in nature through personal moments. I'm really big on engaging with nature in a very personal and intimate way to kind of, we all go to nature for our specific things and our specific needs. And mine is, kind of like that mental clarity and feeling all right with myself. So that's kind of what my work is based in and focuses on. And, that typically results in smaller scenes, textures, patterns, and intimate abstracts and stuff like that. So
cool. Okay. So where did it all start? Was it something that you've always been passionate about? Is art something that you've always been into, or has it come a little bit later?
I'd say it came a little bit later. I never really considered myself a creative person growing up. I really liked art class in, middle school and high
Sure.
school. But, I didn't find photography really until I was forced to get a camera for, I was in culinary school, and
Okay.
one of my classes, so that was my original career right out of high school. And one of my classes was the job. I was an apprentice. So I had to take photos of the food and the things that I was doing to put in a workbook to
Yep.
submit for class credit. So I went out and bought a camera, and that's mainly what I used it for. But I really enjoyed it, so I um, took it with me to, I went to a lot of like punk rock shows, and
Sure.
skateboarding and snowboarding was in my spare time, and I just kind of always had my camera with me, and playing around with it with that. And in 2000, I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is on the east coast of the United States. And
Yep.
in 2021, or in 2001, I moved to the Pacific Northwest in Portland. And out here, nature is just way more abundant, way more accessible.
Mm.
So naturally, I grew up with a forest in my backyard. So nature was just always a part of my life. I played outside. I rarely watched TV. I didn't play video games. Like, I spent all my time outside.
Sure.
So
Sure.
naturally, that's part of why I wanted to move to Pacific Northwest. So when I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I go hiking and, spend time out in nature, go to the beach. My camera was with me. So it kind of slowly started transitioning. And I still didn't really consider it like an art form. I liked recording things. I liked, being in this little 3x2 viewfinder and
Yep.
taking pictures of things. And not until like, I think it was 2011, I discovered 500px.
Right.
And I realized that there was like a nature photography community.
Mm.
And I didn't know that. I knew of Ansel Adams, but I didn't really like know that there was a nature photography genre,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
all of my photography was just basically going out into nature and hiking. And most of my like all the photos that I shared them on hiking forums, because that was my main interaction with nature. I didn't share them on Instagram. Instagram wasn't even a thing back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it kind of like, once I discovered that, the next time that I went out to Cape Kiwanda on the Oregon coast, I was like, I'm a nature photographer. And there was like a little bit more intent and like understanding, or like, I guess, an identity behind my work.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's kind of, I've really started to explore that and, grab a hold of it and identify with it. And, years and years later, I'm doing it full time. So that's the Cliff's Notes version of it. But there's a lot of, self-discovery and things kind of like nestled into that story.
Yeah.
And
Okay. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind delving into some of that
yeah, go for it.
discovery and work through some of that process of when was the moment? Is there a specific moment, or do you think it was gradual, where you started to realize, okay, what I'm doing is art, and I'm now more intentional about making art as opposed to going out and doing that recording?
Yeah.
Where did that sort of growth come from?
There wasn't really like a flashpoint of where I was like, now it's art. I remember,
Yep.
when I was just kind of really starting to focus on nature photography and identifying like as a photographer. Before, I was just using a camera. Um and I remember at the job that I was working, there was we had an artist on staff, and um he asked me, he's like, do you consider yourself an artist? I'm like, no. He's like, you are. I'm like, no. Like, there wasn't any like intent, or like, I was just
Yeah.
like, I was going out and taking pretty pictures, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like, but that, like, I remember that moment, and like ever since then, I was like, I kind of explore that, like, what does that mean, right?
Mm.
Like, what does calling yourself an artist mean? And in my teaching, I find that some people are even hesitant to call themselves photographers. And labels are labels. I have my
Yeah. Yeah.
opinions about them now. I'm not necessarily a fan of them, but I think
They help people access what someone's thought
Yeah,
process
it can.
behind what
Right.
they're
It
doing.
can give you a better of an understanding, but it doesn't like it's not a definition. Like I don't like the definition, but
Yeah.
it can be used as like a way to kind of understand and and give yourself um a little bit of a framework, I guess, into kind of your approach. Um but I get I've always been kind of like a vulnerable person. Like I I've had my mental struggles and I've had struggles with alcoholism and I talk about those things. And
Sure.
back prior there's a breaking there was a switch in 2017, which I'll talk about, but prior to that, going out, so like going out into nature was always like my, like when I was going through my battle with alcoholism, like going to nature was like how I dealt with it.
Yep.
Like when went to nature, I knew that I was safe, that I wasn't going to drink, and that instead of like drinking and filling my mind and my heart with like that guilt and that shame, I was out in nature trying to find gratitude, that I get to like be standing next to this creek in a beautiful place. And so that was really important to me, and I always wrote about that whenever I would release photos. So I would like put a photo of like a waterfall out and talk about like what I was going through and things like that. So it kind of became associated with my work, like kind of like being vulnerable and talking. In 2017, there was kind of like this realization that I had, because I kind of started becoming really detached from my work, where I wasn't really being fulfilled. Like the journeys out into nature were definitely fulfilling, but it felt like my work wasn't necessarily living up to the reasons that I went out.
Yeah.
So in 2017, my girlfriend and I took a trip out to southern Utah, and I, being from the Pacific Northwest and kind of cutting my nature photography teeth on the wide angle landscape scenes, I had my wide angle on. I think I had a really cheap, terrible telephoto that I got some great shots on. But I had my wide angle on, and I'm in the desert with like all this stuff that's really far away, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And we were sitting next to a river, and I saw these leaves, these cottonwood leaves, kind of like blowing in the wind and flashing in the light. And I was like, what if I shot those like not just as leaves, but like out of focus, and I composed with the colors and the tones and the flashing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
And like I did that, and I spent like a good hour and a half, 2 hours almost, just like walking up and down the river, shooting things in harsh light out of focus. And I loved it so much. It was like, it was a different world. I was able to like, get in my viewfinder, and, it was like everything else just kind of went away. And I realized that, what I was drawn to was the more intimate plays of light and kind of like those personal moments. And like, I didn't understand that until I went to Utah. Because before, it kind of became like, I'm going to go to this place and capture a photo. So my work.
So you had
stopped.
a view in mind, or a particular.
Right. Yeah. Like I knew what the waterfall looked like, and you follow like, there's kind of like a formula. Like you want the stream in the lower third, and you want the splash pool about here, and then the waterfall comes down, and then trees and foliage. There's kind of like a formula. A lot of waterfall shots, kind of they're all pretty similar.
Yep.
So that was like my thing, and like, getting a shot, you wanted to differentiate yourself. So it was always just like, what can I put in the foreground of this waterfall that nobody else put in? And that was the defining feature. It wasn't necessarily my interaction with nature, or telling the story of my interaction with nature. It was like, how good can this photo look, and how different and creative is the foreground going to be? But when I went to New York, kind of like having that realization and coming back to the Pacific Northwest, things kind of just started to come together. And I realized that, it is those smaller, intimate plays of light, those smaller scenes, those personal moments that I go to nature for, that I should be pointing my lens at. And, so in 2017, there was like that epiphany, and my work kind of just like switched from going, I kind of like reclaimed the reason that I went to nature. Before, I was going out to take photos, and nature happened instead of going out into nature and having photos happen. Right. So, I kind of basically like almost like a switch, just threw away that whole results driven process. And now when I go to nature, like I don't go with any kind of expectations. I don't even go expecting to use my camera. And oftentimes I don't. But when I do use my camera, it's because something in nature called to me and compelled me to point my lens at it.
Yeah.
And then engaging with that, that's where I kind of get everything that I need out of my trips to nature that keeps me sane and able to handle everything that I go through in life.
Yeah, interesting. So, in terms of that creative process, not going out with a preconceived notion of what the image is going to look like in the beginning, how do you resolve the images, I guess, that you're taking in post? Is that done in post processing, and you go, okay, yeah, it's a selection process. These work, these don't, and it might be balance, it might be tonal balance, or whatever, or is it something more deliberate in the field that you're doing to try and get as many results as you possibly can?
Yeah. I don't think about post at all in the field. Like even I like, I might every once in a while I might think like something might creep in where, compositionally where I'm like, okay, I need to frame, this way, and that kind of doesn't work for the composition, but I know that I can either stretch it out or
Sure.
I can bring it, I can do things like that. Yeah. So there's very like maybe every once in a while something like that creeps in. And I do obviously, I'm photographing, and I can't lie and say that there's not a goal to capture an aesthetically pleasing photo, but the whole purpose of looking through my viewfinder is to engage in an intimate way on a deeper level with something that called to me.
Yeah.
So when I'm in the field, it's purely that, I am just like, I'm finding gratitude, I'm finding peace, it is my meditation, like nothing else exists in nature. When we're, sitting at our computers, we got like Facebook, we got Twitter, we got Instagram,
Yep.
we have, bills we need to pay, we have jobs we need to do, dishes we need to wash, traffic we need to sit in, lines we need to stand in. We have all these things that life has become. But when I'm in nature looking through my camera, I know that none of that matters. Like none of that matters, especially like if I'm off grid and I don't have a cell signal, like the email that I have to respond to, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yep.
Whatever, like I said, like whatever life has become, like it all changes. So when I go out in nature, and that just all goes away. And I know that I can just like basically get down to the nuts and bolts of existence, which is just me and the thing that called to me. And I'll just pour everything that I have into that moment. So that's what I get out of it. And when I come back into, I download everything to my computer, it's sometimes when I'm in the field, there's a moment where I'm like, okay, I really like this photo or whatever, but there are a lot of times where I've had really personal, intimate moments that I thoroughly enjoyed and got everything I needed out of it, but I never got a photo.
Sure.
I kind of view it as when I get a photo, when I interact with these things, and I come away with a photo from the experience that can represent it, it's a gift, but it's never the goal. So sometimes I get gifts from my experience and my interaction, but it's never the goal. Coming into post and picking which photo is going to work, that's when I start looking things at a little bit more, composition and tones and stuff like that. But that's kind of like my process. But it's every photo is kind of different. There are some photos that kind of I know in the field that it's going to be a portfolio photo, and sometimes they might take a year or two to kind of go through my process and make it into the books.
Yeah, right. Speaking about the books and some of your other work, there's obviously themes that come to the fore: moving water, etc., etc. Do you go out with intent to sort of build that body of work, or is it more you selecting that across your entire portfolio over time?
I've noticed that it's slowly transitioning to having intent, which I kind of struggle with because that can be maybe considered a results driven mindset. But it's not necessarily something that I like force myself to go out and find. But whenever I see something happening, I kind of like, oh, there's this theme that I'm working within that this could fit well within.
Sure.
So there is kind of some of that creeping in a little bit that has more to do with my non-nature work. which I've been getting back into a little bit. But nature, it kind of starts with the intent to go out into nature. So I have two distinct collections right now, Ebb and Flow, which is my waterwork, and then Figments of Place, which is more of an experimental, non-literal interaction with nature. And kind of so Ebb and Flow, it's like anytime I'm around water, like I seek water out. If I have a decision to go to like 100 places, I'm probably going to pick one that has water. When I go camping to like kind of like, get back to myself, it's at a very specific place where I don't have cell signal where there's water. So that's, water is just really important to me in my creative identity, I guess, just because of what it gives to me. And then Figments of Place kind of became born of, I don't travel a lot. I'm tethered to the Pacific Northwest. And when you kind of keep going to the same places over and over again, and, I'm not a sunrise, sunset shooter necessarily. I shoot a lot in the middle of the day. I have to be a little bit, dig into my creative tool bag and be a little creative about how I'm interacting with the scenes or interacting with the light so that I can present them in visually pleasing ways in a photograph or whatever have you. Kind of you lose your creative invigoration going to the same places and shooting the same thing. So, trying to get that excitement back, I just dig into that tool bag and I use multiple exposures, intentional camera movement, sometimes a combination of the two. And it gives me a different interaction with nature where I'm not necessarily looking at the scene in a literal way. I'm more like wondering what I can do with the textures and the tones and the different elements, and see what the results are. So it kind of makes it exciting because you kind of what the results are going to be. So it brings in a little bit of that invigoration and experimentation, and in doing that, you kind of like understand it gives you different things, right? So like, when I'm photographing water, it's usually like a very literal thing. Like I am photographing water, and it's really important. But I know what I'm doing, and like every decision is calculated. But when I'm doing my Figments of Place, everything's a little bit more playful, a little bit more experimental. That mood to be like really personal and deep with nature, I typically photograph in a more literal way. But if I'm feeling that I need a little bit more freedom, a little bit more playfulness, a little bit more experimentation, then I typically play in the Figments of Place way. So I kind of get different things out of each interaction.
So for me, that process of experimentation comes and risk-taking, if you like, comes with the risk that you're going to suffer some failures and, or you're going to have setbacks in going, okay, well, that didn't quite work. How do you deal with that? And how do you, I guess, try to maximize your success rate as opposed to your failure rate? And I guess just in that mindset of, okay, that didn't work, what are you trying to learn from that experience of that not working?
Okay. I like that question. Like I said, it's all about the process for me. So, I know that I have a luxury in that I do this for a living, that I go out a lot and that I can spend, a week in one place and, not really even pull my camera out. So, I don't take that for granted, and I'm very grateful for that. But, if you're doing the same things over and over again, you're going to get the same results, right? And I think creativity is born of curiosity, right? And where's the curiosity if you already know what you're going to get? So, you have to be okay with, I encourage people. Part in one of my presentations and on workshops, I encourage people to take crappy photos. Right? If you put the experience first and the process first, then the crappy photos don't matter because you're already getting what you want. Right. And I don't think of photography as taking a photo. I think of it as exploring. The camera is just a tool that I use to intimately explore something. So if I'm intimately exploring that and I don't get any good photos, but I enjoyed the process and I enjoyed that interaction, then there's nothing to worry about, right? But doing this for a living, I'd need to be putting images out, people expect to see images. So, there is a little bit of a balance with that. And, I haven't put a fresh photo on my website since 2021. And I'm seeing the business results of that. Like I'm not getting as, my SEO has kind of been affected by not really updating my website or driving traffic to it, and things like that. So, I'm starting to see parts of that, but I have a very low hit rate on images that go into my portfolio versus images that don't. But I think it's important that as long as you're like engaging with something in a genuine and authentic way, I think it's important to continue to do that, because then you'll start to understand what works and what doesn't work. Like I can give the example of water. Like I remember the first time I pointed my camera at water. I didn't know what I was doing. It was direct light on water. And, that's something that I really enjoy shooting, and the photos are terrible, but I really enjoyed it. So I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And back then I didn't know that it was going to become what it has become. It was just like, oh, that was cool, but once I kind of realized that, this is something that I need to explore with some consciousness behind it and things like that, then I really started to apply it and then learn what worked and what didn't work. So if I didn't allow myself to take those terrible photos, then I wouldn't be the photographer I am today, creating some of the most personally meaningful work that I've created. And, the whole exploring things and, experimenting with your camera, you might stumble upon something that you didn't even know existed if you hadn't done that. So, doing the same thing over and over again is going to produce the same results. And one of my biggest questions is asking myself, what if I did this? What if I did that? Breaking rules, pushing my camera to its limits. I shoot at absurdly high ISOs a lot of the time. I point at the brightest light that I can find. I shoot in the fastest shutter speed. I'm testing every inch of my camera settings and pushing it to its limits. And it's resulted in like things that I love to interact with. So I think there's a big case for being okay with your failures and taking terrible photos and, just engaging in an authentic way.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, I never took formal classes or training or anything like that. I started shooting film, so you kind of learn pretty quickly, shooting a manual camera and stuff like that.
Becomes expensive, the mistake.
Yeah, I'm actually, film's getting back into it, and that includes me. Like, I got my film camera out, and I have like 6 or 7 rolls to be developed, and I have all of the development stuff and all of the scanning stuff. So I'm going to do it all on my own. But I'm waiting for my son to finish his first ever roll of film so we can develop it together. But yeah, I learned shooting film and, just going through the process. It's not terribly hard to kind of understand, what a camera does and ways to use it. I think the hardest part is more, kind of wrangling your creativity and thinking outside the box and stuff, which can be hard for a lot of people. But I didn't have any formal training. I would say my biggest mentor is one of my best friends, Alex Noriega. Back kind of when I was getting into photography, it was more Photoshop. He's a huge computer nerd. So he really understands Photoshop and processing and stuff like that. And in composition, so when I first got into nature photography, he was one of the first people that I found, and I kind of started chatting with him, and we have slowly become really good friends. But yeah, like, the whole technical side of thing and the creative side of things was basically, I'm just an introspective person. I like to understand things. I like to try things that are new, which is interesting. I'll talk about that. With photography and creativity, I like to try new things, but I'm a creature of habit in most every other way. So, that's one thing that photography has taught me about myself, is that like maybe I can take a little bit more risks, because I take a lot of risks with my camera, and obviously, taking a terrible photo has way less repercussions than making a terrible life decision. But something that I want to kind of derive a little bit more from my creativity is learning to take a little bit more risks in life instead of always playing it safe and being a creature of habit. Just going through the process and kind of testing things out.
Well, speaking of taking risks, going out and making landscape photography in particular as a career, how did that come about? What was the thinking behind that, and what were you doing to sort of set that up and say, okay, well, it was a hobby, or it was a side hustle at some point for those that are, you know, getting into it, and making that decision to say, all right, well, I'm cutting the cord. I'm not got any other income. This is how I'm going to live. How did that happen?
Well, I grew up in the restaurant industry and cooking for a living, and I ended up in a retail food business. And I was a manager. I worked for this company for 16 years, and ended up managing the kitchen and the department that sold all that food. So, you know, we were making $200,000 a week in sales, and I had a team of 60 people that I was the boss of. And it demanded a lot, you know, and in the process of, you know, in the middle of working for this company is when I kind of really started to get into photography and understand photography. And I kind of like, before I knew about nature photography, I knew that I was getting into photography a little bit more. And I was like, there's a way that I can make money with this. And my first thought was wedding photography. I hate weddings, and I'm not like I like the fact I've shot a couple weddings, and I like the act of shooting, but I didn't necessarily like the processing, and, you know, it wasn't creatively fulfilling.
Sure.
So when I kind of discovered nature photography was a thing, it kind of put it in my ear. I was like, oh, how can I leverage this? You know, I can do art fairs, or, you know, things like that.
Yep.
And at the time, you know, so I was becoming really good friends with Alex and my friend Ted Gore, and we talked a lot. Like, we talked every single day, all day long. We had a chat going, and it was just like, you know, we were just immersed in photography. And, you know, in the middle of that, I'm kind of really working in kitchens is really starting to lose its sheen, right? Like, it's a hard job. It's a labor of love. It's long hours. It's hard work. It's low pay.
Yep.
And being in management, you know, there comes politics and red tape and kind of like that whole side of things. And and it just got to the point where, like, I gave so much, you know, I'm like an all or nothing type of person. I gave so much to that job, and it just became really challenging. So I was like, I'm going to give myself a 5-year goal of doing this for a living. And I went to a showing of the Photo Cascadia people, so Sean Bagshaw, Kevin McNeil, like all those guys. And those are people that I looked up to, and they had a showing. So I went there to meet them. And I remember talking to Kevin McNeil and, you know, saying, oh, you know, I'd like to be able to do this for a living. He's like, dude, just do a workshop. Just do a workshop. And so that kind of put it in my ear. I was like, oh, it's not that easy there, Kevin McNeil. So then, like, one day I said something about doing a workshop in our chat, and Ted was like, let's do a workshop. I'm like, okay. And I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
Like, at all. Like, I didn't know anything about it. So I started looking into it, and, you know, that summer, or whenever it was, or that spring, we did a workshop, and we sold 2 sessions out like that.
Right.
And, you know, so, you know, all this is kind of building, and then you know, I'm becoming a little bit more known in photography, and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, you know, getting private workshop requests, but I can't take the time off for it because I, you know, have this job and they didn't approve my time off, or I can't like just call out and let my team down. I'm like, man, I would make as much in 2 days as I did in like a week working this other job. So like, it kind of became the struggle. And then when that management job kind of like ran its course and I stepped out of that role, I gave myself a 5-year goal to start doing it for a living. Another company came and bought that company out, and all of my stock options and my stock that I have with the company was paid out. So I was like, all right, you know what? This is my nest egg. It's the sign. It's now or never. And I've been doing it since, and that was in late 2017.
Fantastic. So let's talk a bit about the book. Obviously, the Ebb and Flow book has recently come out. What drove that process of saying, okay, a book's a good idea?
Yeah. So it's a book of my waterwork. It is called Ebb and Flow. This is an advanced copy that I have here. Super nice. I'm really, really happy with it. Really proud of it. But, you know, in just the way that I interact with nature, and what water specifically brings to me, and how important it has been in me fighting my demons. it felt like the work was more important than just throwing up on a website and letting it sit like that. Like I wanted to present it in a way that was in line with its significance personally. So for me, that meant a book. And, there are a lot of barriers to doing a book. One of them is, financial. So I never had the financial capital to pull it off until recently. And so that was like one of the very first things that I did when I realized that I could do it was dig into my plethora of water abstracts and textures and stuff like that, and put together a book, kind of showcasing the beginning of my journey in this relationship that I have with water. And I've been exploring it with intent ever since 2017, trying to photograph it in every way possible. It's kind of hard to tear me away from photographing water when I'm doing it. So there's no like flashpoint of me saying like, oh, I'm going to do a book. I just always knew that it needed to be something significant and not just kind of like thrown up on a website. So and still now, like you can't find the images on my website except for maybe a couple. They're all in the book. So to see the majority of the work, you got to get the book.
You got to get the book. That's not a bad marketing strategy.
Not a bad marketing strategy. Maybe eventually once it gets out there. I know I've had some print requests from people who have seen some of the images, and some of them are included in other areas on my website. But by and large, the collection itself is not. So I'll probably put a small selection of images on my website, but the majority of them are going to be in the book.
So you're working with a publisher, or is it a self-published?
Kind of a mix of both. So the gentleman that I am working with, his name is Jerry Greer, and he has brokered a lot of prints or a lot of books for people by working with the printer and stuff like that, who is based in South Korea. But he wanted to start his own publishing imprint. So his brokerage is Mountain Trail Press. And his publishing is Platinus Editions. And since we kind of both needed something, like I needed a publisher unless I was going to self-publish, and he kind of needed somebody to publish, we kind of did a mix. So I basically, I covered the whole cost of the book, and I'm getting 100% of the profits, but he's also helping to use my book to build his publishing side, and he's going to be doing work with me on that end too. So it's kind of a mix of both.
Nice. So when's it out?
So they're currently, it is what's the date? It's the 4th, April 4th today, and they're on a ship somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on their way. And I am on a trip next week, and then I come back, immediately go onto a private workshop. And the day after I get back from that private workshop, they're supposed to be delivered. So around April 21st is when I'm supposed to get the shipment. And then I'll be working on getting all the pre-sales out once that comes.
Fantastic. And people can buy that on your website. Anywhere else?
No, just the website for now. And I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but it's going to be pre-sale prices, which is a little bit of a discount until once I get the books. Once I have the books and I'm able to ship them out as I get orders, then the pre-sale price won't apply, and the price will go up. Not a huge amount, but prior to me getting the books, there is a discounted pre-sale price. And you can go to my website, tjthornephotography.com, or ebandflowmonograph.com to get to it.
No worries. This will be out, I think, 20-something of May, so the last week of May, I think. So
should I re-answer that and being like, oh, you can currently buy it now?
Yeah, why not?
So the question was, when is it available? Is that what the question was?
Yeah.
It's available right now. You can go to my website, tjthornephotography.com, and it's going to be pretty prominent on there. Or I also have a redirected URL, ebandflowmonograph.com, that you can use to get to it. We had pre-sale prices a couple months ago, and those went pretty well. But you can go there, and I have you can get just the book. You can get the book with 1 print, 3 prints, or 6 prints, each a different price tier. And all the prints are printed I bought a 44-inch printer that I have no business buying, but I did anyway. So I'm going to start printing all my own work
Fantastic.
and having control of the whole entire process. So all of the included prints are going to be printed by my own hand here in my printer, and it's
Very,
something I'm really happy about.
very nice. I guess one of the things that comes up when people start to look at photography as a full-time career is that balance between their own creative vision and artistic integrity and what sells, what the client demands and what those commercial demands are. How do you balance that? Do you just go, I don't care what the customer wants, this is what I do? Or are you more trying to
Pretty
blend
much.
that customer feel to it?
No, it's my, creative authenticity has always been really important to me. And I've never, I don't want to say never. I don't think about the customer really. Luckily, the photography business that I have built has kind of gone along with that early vulnerability.
Yep.
So, most of my business comes from teaching creative workshops, and we don't go out to just capture the icons and capture, the same photos everybody else does. It's more a talk about, there's a little bit more of a philosophical side about connecting to the landscape in your own way,
Yep.
recognizing opportunities, and kind of just basically my whole philosophy behind photography and what I do and how I do it is kind of the focus of the workshops. So we spend a lot of time just kind of, out in nature in the middle of the day, arriving on location and not necessarily looking for things to shoot,
Sure.
but more being in a receiving mindset. I think one of the podcasts I was on with Matt Payne, he called it transactional. So we're not going out for this transaction with nature where it's like, I'm going to come to you and you're going to do it's like we go out, and instead of putting energy, that's another way that I kind of frame things in my mind, is that instead of going out into nature and looking for something to shoot and putting all this energy out, I just let it all go and I let things come in. And then whenever things kind of interact or, kind of catch my attention, that's when I interact with them and get lost in my viewfinder. And, I just feel like those moments, those are personal moments to me. A lot of times it might be just a fleeting thing of light. That's every decision in my life brought me to that moment to witness that light hitting that leaf in that way. And when I point my camera at it, it feels like that moment is made just for me. And that's personally significant to me, and what I get out of it is personally significant. So it's about that. And luckily, that's what I've built my business around. So I'm able to put out work that fits within my creative authenticity and, make my money that way.
Yeah.
And, it's hard on the print side. A lot of people like the more dramatic and, it's kind of like I'm in a niche. So it's harder to find print customers, which is why I had no business buying this 44-inch printer. But I'm determined to make it work somehow. And
yeah, I've got to
somehow
say,
I've been getting a lot of orders, multiple, I had a 30-some print order for an apartment complex, and it's all been abstracts. So that's a little warming.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Very nice to hear.
Very encouraging.
Before we started recording, you talked a little bit about not liking the marketing side of things. How do you deal with that dislike of selling yourself and selling your babies, if you like?
Yeah.
How do you get around that and get into that hard-nosed business mindset that you do need to have to say, I'm going to sell myself or sell my
I suck it up and I feel dirty afterwards, basically. Even, I'm, sending newsletters out, people are signing up for your newsletter because they want to hear from you. They sign up expecting to hear about your services. But I always feel like every time I send a newsletter, I'm just asking people to give me money. Of course, I'm a business. I'm like, they're not just handing me money.
Business does, yeah.
Right. There's a service that comes with it, but I just feel dirty, and I try to not be super overt with it. like if I post something on Instagram, I'll be like, here's a link that you can visit if you want, and I'll like, check out my new work and click this link to get it free. It's like, I'm just like here's you can, if you want, you can go to my website, if you like, no pressure. It's not a good business strategy, but and I suffer from that, and I know that it's, I'm being hyperbolic about it. It's not like, one side or the other, that you can do, kind of a blend of two. But I don't know. I have, I don't think super highly of myself, and I have low confidence, and I suffer from mental health things. So some of that plays into it. I have a pretty bad imposter syndrome. So I think, learning how to kind of deal with those things will help me in that regard, which is something that I'm exploring now. I'm going to start working on my mental health a little bit more than I have been. Maybe a little bit of growth in that area, and accepting myself more can help me in marketing and business a little bit. But right now it's been tough.
It's been I honestly think that old adage, love yourself before you can love someone else, is very true. You do have to learn to I guess love what you do, in terms of, hey, I'm actually pretty good at what I'm doing. And I'd certainly say that about your work. You're very good at what you do. I wouldn't be talking to you otherwise.
Thank you.
And there's obviously enough people out there. You sold 30 prints, which is probably more than I've ever sold across my entire career. So that's pretty good going.
That was a surprise, and that's honestly what enabled me to do the book, was getting that order. So it was very helpful.
Very nice, very nice. One of the things that we're talking, I guess, about the things that we don't always like to talk about, but how do you price your work, and how do you come up with a number, or do you sit down and do some analysis and say, all right, well, the print cost is this and distribution cost is that, and then I need a certain profit, and certain images might be worth more because they're more popular? How do you do that analysis, or is it more off the cuff?
It's a little bit more off the cuff. One of the things, part of getting this printer to print my own work was to completely revamp my print business, because I've tried following other people's models that don't necessarily fit within. They don't mesh well with my personality and my work. Right. I was doing trying to sell giant prints, super expensive, like going for that really high end market.
Yep.
And I've had a couple orders here and there, but never would consider myself successful by any means. It wasn't. I don't consider it an income stream even. But a lot of that was based on just kind of like market research and just seeing what other photographers were charging. And I'm coming from a restaurant background and food costs and costing recipes and stuff like that. I can manage a spreadsheet, so I would get spreadsheets and kind of like I had like a list of photographers on one side, and their sizes and their price per square inch that they were charging, to see if there was any kind of theme or any kind of like thing going on there. So I did a little bit of that, but it basically came down to kind of seeing where other people were, what they were charging, and then pricing myself a little bit underneath that to kind of build my business a little bit. Which again, like I said, I didn't have a lot of success with that model. So going to this, I'm going to basically I'm simplifying, because that's what my work is. My work is simplifying. It's simplifying my experience. It's simplifying the scene and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to simplify my business too. And anytime that I do something that is in line with me is when I see results. When I try to do what other people were doing and try to copy it and mimic it, I don't see results. So just going down to one paper that works for me, and like small, medium, large, extra large, and doing the bigger stuff by request is going to be my model. And it's going to be the same thing. I'll just look and see what other people are doing. I'm a terrible accountant. I'm a terrible businessman. I don't dissect everything to see, what my costs are, my, how much profit I need to make and things like that. I probably should,
Yeah.
but it's been working so far, so we'll just go with that.
I think
I
it's
live
all.
pretty.
Go on.
I want to say I live pretty simply. I don't spend a lot of money, so it's more like I make what I can and then I live within that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's always a challenge for creative people to get into that hard-nosed business mindset and understand accounting and marketing and all those other things that you've got to be, particularly when you're in business for yourself. It's not an easy thing to do. As be all of those departments that an organisation might have. As you know, coming from the restaurant business, there was somebody else doing the marketing and doing the imagery around selling the product, and
yep.
You had people doing the actual cooking in under you as a manager. So trying to do it all yourself can be quite a strain. How do you?
And I think I was just a commentary on that. I think if anybody was considering going full time or doing this for a living, like that, like studying that over photography is going to be more important, more beneficial. Like I would even say, if you want to do this for a living and you're planning on going to a school, like go get a business degree, understand that side of things, be comfortable with that side of things, because stress and frustration is a huge impact on creativity. And
very much so.
If you're trying to run your business and you don't really know how, or you feel stressed out and frustrated by it, like you're going to suffer on the creative side. So I know I do. That I would say understanding that side is almost more important than the creative. We know there are plenty of photographers out there who can run successful businesses and make a really good living, but maybe their images might not have the pizzazz that a lot of other people have. So that comes from their business acumen.
Talking about where you live and where you shoot, how has that influenced how you shoot? It's obviously influenced what you shoot, because space around you is what you're shooting. How has it influenced how you shoot, or has it?
It's a good question. I don't know if it has, because when I look back into my past and places I've lived, I kind of still shot the same way, even if I wasn't aware of it. So I think, obviously what I shoot is impacted by that. And how I shoot, here's an example, is like when I go to New York City, I'm still seeing the way that I see in nature. I'm seeing abstracts, I'm seeing textures and patterns, I'm seeing plays of light, I'm seeing all that kind of stuff. So I think, as long as I'm still remaining in that, that authentic mindset, and just kind of like, instead of looking for things, just being open to things, like those same things jump out to me. So I think the biggest way that it has impacted how I shoot is just by giving me the opportunities to kind of, go down that rabbit hole. But I don't think it's changed how I do it, just what I do. That's, or what I shoot.
Have you got a favorite location that you just keep getting drawn back to because of something in that landscape, or is it?
I go to a specific place in Olympic National Park, and that is where I go to, like, when I'm like, I need to get right with myself, and I'm in a bad place and I need nature and I need to immerse myself. I go there, and I go there because there's no cell service. I go there because it's a beautiful fairy tale, forest with next to a rushing glacial river. There's not usually a lot of people there, so I can go there and just kind of tune in, and fill up my spiritual battery. So that's like the one place that I go. But literally, like, you can like take me anywhere in nature and put me somewhere where I can smell the smells and feel the feels and hear the hears, and I can manage. It's just I find gratitude for those moments, no matter where I am.
Yeah, cool. Do you prefer shooting alone or with other people?
Yeah, definitely alone.
Yeah.
When And just 'cause, it's I like to go at my own pace. I like to
Yeah.
not feel like I'm keeping anybody or anything like that. Like my girlfriend is a photographer as well, and we're alike and different in a lot of ways in the way
Yep.
we photograph. But like I know that I can spend an hour photographing the same ripple in water, um, and it'll be completely fine.
Yeah.
But you know, I go out with friends and stuff like that. I'm definitely not somebody who like meets up with people that I don't know to go out and photograph.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very meditative and personal process to me. So I like to kind of do it alone.
Yeah. What's the most memorable photography experience that you've had?
Ooh, most memorable. Hmm. I don't know if I have an answer for that because they're all significant in their own way.
Okay.
I maybe like, something recent that is memorable because it was different. A lot of my work, when I'm photographing, it's very calm and peaceful and serene. But last year on one of our workshops in Death Valley, we had an insane windstorm. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know the kilometers per hour, but it was, like 40, 50 mile per hour sustained winds in the sand dunes. And that was invigorating and it was exciting. And, like seeing the looks on the clients' faces and like I have like a client, a repeat client who does a lot of stuff with me and the nicest guy you could ever meet. And he just looked at me and like, I've never heard him swear, but he just looked at me. He's like, TJ, this is awesome. I was like, and it was like just so like and it was like
Yeah.
I'm a really reserved person, but I was like hooting and hollering. So I guess that's a good answer. It was a really memorable, exciting thing to be a part of, and just kind of in the windstorm. And we had 10 people between me and Alex on our workshop, and I got stuck with two clients that have done numerous things with me who I consider friends. So it was all, and you couldn't see any. There was so much sand, you couldn't see anybody else. It felt like me and these two guys had the world to ourselves, and that was pretty awesome. Good
Yeah.
memory.
Cool. Cool. Are you one to race home after a shoot and put the images on the computer and get stuck into editing, or are you one that
Um,
leaves and sit there and
I
maybe
think that
in a
I
week
think
or a month or
Yep.
yeah,
It could take me a while. Yeah, I'm not in a hurry whatsoever. And just the spot that I'm in lately, with the creative the challenges that I'm going through. I've been in a bit of a creative rut. I mentioned not putting any work on my website since 2021.
yep,
And most of that is because I need the beginning of the process. I need that time in nature. I've been going through a lot mentally and emotionally.
yeah,
So I need that front end of the process. But when it comes down to the back end, I kind of like need not the pressure of business and work, which is
yeah,
terrible. But I've been letting that happen. And but I still want to share things. I kind of want, and this is something that I'm sifting through with my process. But I want to feel a little more free on that end, a little less of the demand and the responsibility. So um, a lot of the images that I've been sharing, like on Twitter or in my Instagram stories, like are very lazily processed, if at all. And most of them are sent from my camera to my phone using the Wi-Fi.
yep,
And then I process them in Snapseed, banding and sensor spots and everything, and like post them in a story. Because I still want to share things, but I don't want to like get home and upload them to my website and keyword and put them on, set up
yeah,
my products and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I'm very terrible at taking my memory card out of my camera and uploading things to my computer. And I have an insane backlog that I'm working through right now. I have like 15 images that I've finally kind of like put through my process in a serious way, rather than just like giving them like, a curves adjustment and posting on Twitter or whatever.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I like to let things marinate. It helps with the process.
Yeah, no,
Duration.
that's great. You mentioned sort of some of that community building, and how do you see community in the landscape photography fraternity sort of building, and how do you think we can support and learn from our peers in the field?
I think, I've made a lot of really good friends in the industry. I'm a huge introvert. Um, and I'm a little bit of a loner, so I kind of keep my circle small.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of I don't have a lot of friends, but the friends that I have are quality and really good friends. So it's hard for me to kind of like reach out in that community, and feel like I'm including myself. But it's a very we photography and nature are important, like hugely important to all of us, and we all connect in that way. So it's an easy place to find people that you connect with, and there are a lot of really good people out there. I love seeing the work that everybody has. I think that just social media in general has kind of created this dynamic. It's made it easy to disagree, and I think a lot of the negative things get more attention than the positive things. It's easy to be riled up about something, and be angry about something than it is to kind of like love something and share something. That's why, like, how many times do you like eat a wonderful meal but you don't leave a review on Google, but that one terrible meal that you eat, you're writing a review, right? So bad word of mouth definitely travels faster than good word of mouth, and I think that's true with social media. So a lot of times I just kind of get really turned off by all of the drama and all of the arguing, and there's always a hot topic of the day, right? It's post processing and how much processing is too much, or composites, or NFTs, and now AI, and I to me it takes away from the creativity, and I feel like a lot of social media has just kind of created so many opinions about what other people do, that doesn't really affect us, and I kind of shy away from it because of that. Like, I don't want to, and I kind of keep my interactions. I'm a positive person. I like to support people. I like to, one of my life mottos is lead with love, and I want to leave a positive impact on the world. So feeling like I might say the wrong thing, or get in the crosshairs of the wrong person kind of just leaves me a little sterile and basic on social media. But I try to reply to every single comment in a meaningful way. I try to call thank people by their names, and that's all important to me, because we're all people, and we all we're not just words on a screen, or profile photos. So I try to look past that and see the people behind it. But yeah, I think I keep the drama, and I think the industry at large as a whole kind of like at a arm's length, just to kind of preserve myself, my mental health and stuff.
It's funny, people notice that one. They may get 1,000 comments on a post, for example, and 999 are positive, and there's one that's negative, and
it's
you always focus on that negative one.
Right? It tears you up, and like that's I've almost, like, especially there are certain places that are kind of like known for that, like YouTube. Like, never read the YouTube comments, right?
No.
Like it could be like a picture of like a puppy playing with a tennis ball, and somewhere in there somebody is being racist, or they're making it about politics, or whatever. And it's just like, I feel like social media, it's enabled so many things, but I think the side effects of it, like the negative side effects of it, are pretty terrible. Just based on like how it steals our attention, and how addicting it can be, and just like how easy it is to type something out and be rude. So I am very cautious of it, and I try to, I have my issues with it. I probably spend way more time on it than I should, but I'm trying to wrangle that in.
I've taken to asking people that leave negative comments if they're okay.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
to, you know,
Yeah. I try to
try and
not take it.
change the conversation a little bit.
Yeah. Like, you kind of like one time there was this guy that was mad at me in traffic and he's like yelling at me and I just roll up and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, do you think you're going to be okay? Like,
Yeah,
do you think you'll get through this?
yeah,
And then it's just like, I guess my hope is like, that I'm kind of insulating myself from like really like letting that affect me, and B, that like maybe they'll be like, oh, you know what, this really isn't that big of a deal.
yeah.
But
Maybe I haven't
it's
overreacted. Yeah,
yeah, like, but we all, everybody has their thing that they're going through and that they're struggling with, and they deal with that in different ways.
absolutely.
Sometimes it's taking it out on other people, and um sometimes it's holding it in, and then it's just like it becomes too much to hold in and then you explode.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I try to not let somebody else's trash blow onto my side of the street, so to speak.
yeah. Good, good philosophy. What do you see as the future of landscape photography, and what do you see as the biggest challenges facing landscape photographers at the moment?
um you know I don't know, because I don't think about things like that. And I
Okay.
know a lot of people right now are concerned with AI, and like there's like the arguments all around that, and some people are really upset about it, and some people are like, oh, it's great, it's cool. And then there's the whole, I don't get involved in all of that. All I know is what I do
Mm,
and what it gives to me, and that's all I know, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I feel in terms of, I feel like, there is a more of a focus and a shift on intimate scenes and things like that, which is encouraging, because you know we've all seen the same photos over and over and over and over and over, and the same comps over and over and over and over and over. So things become a little stale. So anytime people are, I know what photography has given me and
yeah,
what I've gotten in life out of it. So anytime that I see people kind of like really taking an interest on growing their creative vision and engaging with photography in a more personally meaningful way. And that's not to say that like, bigger landscapes aren't personally meaningful or can't be significant
sure.
or can't be beautiful. All I know is what I get out of it. And I know that like it's those intimate things. So um, it does seem that, there seems to be a trend going in that direction where people are wanting a little bit more personality in their own creative vision in their work. So that's encouraging. But you know, I don't. I try to live in the present and just take each day as it comes and
Yeah,
focus on myself and do what I do, and what other people do and what they argue about and whatever they're doing doesn't impact what I do and how I interact with nature and what I point my camera at. So I just
fantastic.
that's been working for me. So I'm just gonna keep doing that.
Great. What do you like to do when you're not doing photography?
Is there anything else? Um, that's and that's kind of what my life is. My life is photography. And there's something to be said about that. Like now that I do it for a living, I feel like all I do is think about work and photography. And I don't get much of an escape for it, which also, might be playing into why I haven't posted an image on my website since 2021.
Sure, sure.
But that's basically become my life is photography. I like watching hockey.
Okay.
That's so when it's hockey season, I root for the
Who do you
Pittsburgh
follow?
Penguins. Pittsburgh Penguins. That's where I grew
Yeah.
up.
Yep.
So they're actually playing right now, which is why I asked you if you wanted to do this a little earlier. It's the playoff race.
You got a little
But
window on the screen watching the game as we go.
no comment. It may or may not be the end of the first period and 2-0 for the New Jersey Devils. But we won't talk about it. Anyway. But yeah, no, I'm a pretty simple person. I like photography. I like nature. Going on hikes with my girlfriend and my son, and that's pretty much what I do.
Fantastic.
Come my life.
Is there anyone else you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Yeah. Mike DiMiola. who has taken a workshop with me. He actually reached out for a private workshop one year. And it was a bad year. We had a lot of forest fires, so a lot of the locations that we were planning to go were smoked out. So I was like, "Are you up for camping?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, so I took him to my place where I actually run an intimate workshop there, where it's like that a lot of people are like, "How do you?" People ask me, like clients, are like, "How do you see and do what you do?" And the easiest way for me to do that is to take them to the place where like that is where I do it the most, and to like, and it's basically just immersing yourself in. So anyway, I took him to this location, and he's only been photographing for a few years, but his creative vision and his eye are really good. So Mike DiMiola, let's see, I'm gonna butcher the word because it's he's from Catalonia, and but it's a Jaume Llorens.
Okay.
Jume, I believe it is. He has some really interesting work. Jared Armijo, who goes on Instagram by Away I Flew, he's really interesting to talk to about his work and the way that he sees things. I think those people would be really, really cool to talk to.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yep.
I've got one controversy that we've always tried to get to the bottom of in this podcast. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No. It's
not a thing.
No, it shouldn't exist. No, it's pineapple. Like you're ruining both the pineapple and the pizza. Like eat the pineapple and eat the pizza, but like to eat them together. I know that's a hot topic, and I'm definitely a no pineapple on pizza type person. My girlfriend, she's like, she'll put like
she's a Philistine.
We always joke about it because she'll like take like the two most opposing features. She's like, but it's salty and sweet. I'm like, all right, well, put some anchovies in your milkshake because it's salty and sweet. Go ahead, there you go, eat it, salty and sweet. That works, doesn't it? It works, doesn't it? Just because it's like salty and sweet doesn't mean it's good. But no pineapple on pizza. Get out of here.
Thank you.
What about you? What about you though?
Me, if it's on there, I won't pick it off, but I won't order it. So
yeah, I'd probably pick it off.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, but I won't go out of my way to get it. It's not on my order list. There's a particular pizzeria here nearby that does it's their special pizza, and it's pretty good.
You could be a politician. You could be a politician with that answer. You're satisfying both sides.
I know. Got to keep both sides happy.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, TJ. It's been absolutely wonderful getting to know you. Where can people find your work?
You can find me on Instagram at TJ Thorne _photography, I believe it is. My website is tjthornephotography.com. Those are the two places I post my work the most, or I'm on Twitter, which is Twitter, but at TJ Thorne _photo. But basically just Google TJ Thorne with an E at the end and you'll be able to find me.
Brilliant.
But yeah, no, I really appreciate you talking to me about this. It was a good chat. I'm always nervous to do these things. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But it was you did a good job. It was a nice, easy conversation. You asked a lot of really good questions. So thanks for getting me here.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. I try to make it as easy as possible to have the conversation, because to me, this whole thing is about having those conversations. And I do say to some people, it's just you and me talking, no one else will hear it. But yep. I know that there's a couple of listeners out there. So
well, you're easy to talk to, so thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening, because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.